on family matters and issues related to building healthy, functional families. My name is Ria Rupchan Singh and I'm the host of this program. And today we'll be discussing mental illnesses, childhood and youth development, suicide and support systems. And the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services said it will continue to prioritize the care of children, youth, and recognize the essential role they still play in the development of families and communities. And as such, the ministry will provide access to programs and services which support their well-being and care. And for more information, these services can be found on the ministry's website, www.social.gov.tt. As mentioned, today's topic focuses on mental illness, childhood and youth depression, suicide and support systems. And joining me to discuss this is Mrs. Simone Alexander Jakey, who is the coordinator of the Suicide Prevention Hotline at National Family Services Division. Mrs. Alexander Jakey is a social worker, life skills facilitator and licensed civil mediator with the Mediation Board of Trinidad and Tobago. Mrs. Alexander Jakey has directed various empowerment NGOs throughout her 15 years of experience. Also joining our panel this afternoon is Ms. Farisha Mohammed, who is a social worker at the National Family Services Division. Ms. Mohammed has been a family service social worker attached to the National Family Services Division, Ministry of Social Development and Family Services for approximately 8 years. She obtained her bachelor's in social work at the University of the Southern Caribbean, after which she pursued her master's in social work at the University of the West Indies. And rounding off today's panel is Dr. Varma Diyal Singh, who is a psychiatrist, secretary of the Association of Psychiatrists of TNT, and registrar at Baratarium Mental Health and Wellness Clinic. Now, before we get to the discussions, viewers at home, remember you can send your questions via our TTT Live online Facebook page and give us a call at 622-4010. We'll be right back. We take a short break, but come back and join us.
Are you on board yet? Don't line up. Sign up and enjoy the convenience of the direct deposit system from the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. Yes, convenience is at your fingertips when you sign up to receive your disability assistance and public assistance grants and senior citizens pension directly from your bank account. No need to worry. Your money is safe and free from fraud and theft. So avoid lining up and try signing up. Log on to www.social.gov.tt or visit your local board office for more details and sign up today. Remember, direct deposit. It's fast, it's easy, and it's safe. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, helping, empowering, transforming lives.
And welcome back to It's Family Time, Let's Talk. As we mentioned earlier today, we are talking mental illness, childhood and youth depression, and suicide and support systems. And we're going to start today as we get into mental health and find out a little bit more about what mental health is and how we can be able to notice when people have certain signs of mental illness and how we can basically help them if that is the case. So I would like to introduce our first guest this afternoon, Dr. Varma Dayal Singh. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon.
It's a pleasure having you here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Of course, we're going to find out some more information as well from the social division, as well from Ms. Farisha Mohammed, and also from the suicide hotline with Mrs. Simone Alexander Jakey, who can, give us outlets as well. Not just people who may be considering suicide, but people who may want to help people if they notice that they're going through some sort of something. So before we get into all of that, let's deal with mental illness on a whole, because I think that is where it starts before we get to the various points as we go along. So Dr. Dayal Singh, tell us in the simplest of terms that you can, because I don't think that Trinbagonians understand it too well. What is mental illness?
Okay. Mental illness really looks at an individual's capacity to function in society, to be able to function out there. And mental illness really takes into account the person's cognitive function, how he is able to think, to learn. So even if you look at the extreme of life, like persons with Alzheimer, their cognitive capacity, their memory sense go. A young child with a developmental problem will have that cognitive deficiency. So it looks like cognition. It looks like also mood. How do you regulate your mood? How could you, if you are faced with a situation, how would you be able to manage that? So it looks like the mood of that individual, how does it appear? So if somebody has depression, bipolar disorder, where the mood starts to swing. Those are also problems if somebody is not able to actually regulate their mood and learn how to move against it. Then you look at the behavior of someone. So let's say somebody has anxiety and obsessive compulsive disorder. They may have a strange behavior where they are washing their hands. They may have certain order where they have symmetry, and even anxiety will not produce that behavior. Other things now, like if you have what you call a conduct disorder, some children are wired differently, some adults are wired differently. So you have things like if their behavior is antisocial, you may have what we used to call psychopaths before. Those are behaviors that you say, this is not good behavior. Conduct disorder in children, bad behavior. So you look at the behavior, their mood, their level of being able to fit into society. So mental illness has many faces. And this is why we have to look at the different features, how they present, and how that individual within themselves could function out there without causing any great distress to himself.
Now, you did mention that, some of it is developmental, but what are some of the contributing or causative factors that may cause that? And it just brings me thinking about what happened last night, just sitting outside on our porch, and this guy is walking down the road and he's singing to himself.
Yes.
And he's walking along the way and singing, and I'm like, something wrong with him? And then he passes back not too long out, and he's still singing. It's like, I wonder if he's listening to something or if he's actually, if there is something wrong with him. And when we find things like that or we notice things like that, what do we do, you know?
Yep.
But what are some of the, as I was talking, some of the contributing factors? I was wondering what brought him to that point.
That point.
Yeah.
Well, there are different factors. First, let's look at the genetic factor. You look at something called schizophrenia, where you lose touch with reality. Some persons may see things, hear things, hallucinations, or strange beliefs. It's 1% in the general population. But if a first-degree relative has the schizophrenia, it raises to 10%. So there's a genetic factor in bipolar, depression, schizophrenia. So you may have the genes that will now come about, and if you have stress factors and you don't have coping skills, it could manifest. Not necessarily so, but it could. So genetic factors is one. Then you look at biochemical changes. So our chemicals in the brain, we look at that helps emotion and regulations. This thing called dopamine, serotonin, epinephrine. There are different chemicals that if it starts to change, you can have a person actually presenting with depression, presenting with schizophrenia, bipolar. So that is why medicine now is targeted at that. Besides that, you have psychosocial stresses. So let's say I lose my job. I don't know how to get money for my family. that will play on my mind. I mightn't be able to sleep. I don't know how to reach for help. That event could now trigger me into now having depression if I'm not sleeping for 2 weeks. Any sort of trauma, be it abuse, accident, robbery, all these things can trigger. So we look at the biopsychosocial model to say that figures that can, factors that can precipitate mental illness. However, if we get the right skills, and if we could recognize it early, a person who would have that trauma or even the genetic predisposition may not necessarily succumb. So that's where society and all of us will have to look out at individuals to see how we can get treatment early.
But how do we do that? Because I mean, I was a former teacher, and I would look at the children and see their behaviors and that type of thing. Parents, on the whole, too, need to observe their children so that you can, in fact, catch this thing early, as you said. But how and what are some of the things that we need to look for in behaviors? And then, when we do, if as a teacher you do find something that is looking a little, and you want to help the child, you're not, labeling the child in any way, and you tell the parent. And I think probably one of the social services divisions will have to deal with that as well. Yes. How do you get that parent to accept it? Because sometimes they don't want to accept a diagnosis like that. But what do you look for, especially in young children, to know that something is just not right, and you probably need to get some medical help?
Well, basically, what we tend to tell teachers, I know teachers have it very difficult. They have these schedule changes in their syllabus and have to. So some teachers would say, Doc, asking us to be a psychologist. I said, but the society is dependent on teachers really recognizing disorders in children, because the child will spend 8 hours in school. So they may be the one that may be able to save us from a clinics overfilling with mentally ill persons. So you look at a child to see if there's any changes in that child's behavior. So let us say a child comes in normally reserved, and suddenly that child is starting to get on disruptive, violent behavior. Because studies have shown that children who have violence may be having problems at home in terms of physical abuse, sexual abuse, they have poverty, they have neglect. So those children who have changes in behavior, so a quiet child suddenly getting very aggressive, a talkative child suddenly getting very withdrawn. You look at a child lunchtime, not eating, not interacting with the peers, a child falling back in class, a child also sometimes, just sleeping whole day, drowsy, something is happening with that child. So you look at that behavior. How is that child interacting? Now, there are some conditions called ODD, Oppositional Defiant Disorder. That disorder, a child will not obey the teacher, does not obey teacher, does not obey the parent, defies authority, even does things to irritate, to instigate mischief, to make their parents' pressure go up, as you say, or the teacher. That child can't help it. The child has something called ODD. So all these are things you look out for children. Getting on, giving problems to see if it raises a red flag. Once it raises a red flag, the Ministry of Education has the student support services. That is staffed with psychologists. And you have these, and social workers also. So basically, we try to tell the teachers, reach out for this entity. The social workers now could go home and see what's happening in that child's home. Is there poverty, neglect, abuse? The psychologist now will be able to take that child to see how to cope with any trauma. And if there's abuse, litigation could come. If there's poverty, family services could come in and give something. So it's really important, I'm saying, the teachers to recognize how we can manage, look at those kids and go further.
I'm glad that you mentioned family services, because I was going to address this question to Ms. Farisha Mohammed. In the event that, as we were talking about, if a teacher should see something, because we want to catch it early. I mean, we may not always be that lucky, but in the event that, you see something change in the child's behavior and the teacher thinks, well, we need to do something about this. How can, or what can the teacher do, and how can family services actually help with that, Ms. Mohammed?
As Dr. Diarra previously mentioned, we're looking at the changes in the social aspect of the child's life. So sometimes the separation of parents, poor parenting skill and all of that. So coming back to the teachers now in identifying your student comes into school and you see a drastic change in behavior, then you would try to inquire what is happening here. What caused that drastic change? Is it something that is medically wrong with the child, or is it something that is socially wrong at home? And then the teacher can proceed to make that referral. So they can refer to us, as Dr. Diaz would have said. The ministry has a student support services division within Ministry of Education, but we also deal with that dynamic as well, because we treat with the entire family and not necessarily with only the child.
Right.
So in saying that is that when that referral comes to us, we will take the parents. If we do an assessment, and during that assessment we see children or the entire family is affected by lack of parenting skills or social support or whatever, we try to create an intervention now that treats with the entire family and not just the child, so that we address each aspect in its entirety. And in doing that, we would then treat with the entire picture. And then if we need to refer, we would refer to the child guidance clinic, where the child would be given an assessment by a mental health professional, and there they will determine whether or not the child needs to be medicated, whether the child needs to continue clinic at the child guidance clinic and whatnot, as well as continue talk therapy at the Ministry of Social Development.
And something I wanted to ask as well, as a teacher, if you wanted to do that, do you inform the parent before you come to Social Welfare Division, or do you do that and then the Social Welfare Division will get in touch with the parent and then have consultations? How does that work exactly?
So as you said before, when you find out that something is wrong with your child, it is something that sometimes parents have a lot of difficulty accepting. And the humane thing will be to go to the parent first, so that parent will be alerted, because, we don't want the parent to just receive a phone call one day, something is wrong to my child, and we have to go into, whether it's a doctor or the social workers or whoever, but it will be, ethical on the teacher's part to inform the parent, have the parent know that this referral is going to be done, because we want to look into the best interests of your child, and in doing so we feel as though it needs to be referred to whichever division for that intervention to take place.
And how do you get them to continue though?
So, most parents that we encounter, they want their child, they want to find out what is wrong to their child. They want to know that their child could become better, and how they can help that child. So what we do is we work on that aspect of it, where we tap into the emotions of the parent and ensure that they understand that everything that will be done is always done with the best interest of the child, at heart. So that way they will have that motivation to continue.
All right. Well, we're right smack into the middle of this discussion. We've still got so much more to go. We're going to be talking more about depression and suicide. We're going to take a short break. We come right back, so stay with us.
Are you on board yet? Don't line up. Sign up and enjoy the convenience of the direct deposit system from the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. Yes, convenience is at your fingertips when you sign up to receive your disability assistance and public assistance grants and senior citizens pension directly from your bank account. No need to worry. Your money is safe and free from fraud and theft. So avoid lining up and try signing up. Log on to www.social.gov.tt or visit your local board office for more details and sign up today. Remember, direct deposit. It's fast, it's easy, and it's safe. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. Helping, empowering, transforming lives.
Family Time, Let's Talk. That's exactly what we're doing this afternoon. And we are talking mental illness, childhood and youth depression, suicide and support systems that you have with respect to suicide. And I am going to get to that very shortly. But I want to get back to Dr. Dayal Singh, because I think this actually factors into when you really get depressed. And I think maybe everybody, I don't want to say everybody because I don't want to speak for everyone, has been at some point when they're really, really depressed. You may not get to the point of wanting to commit suicide, but there are times when, as human beings, we do feel this weight and this depression, and it's like, I just can't anymore. You know? So explain to us, what is depression and what are the signs of depression so that we can help?
Okay. Well, definitely you made the comment that depression could open the doorway for suicide.
Yes.
So once you are depressed, or once you have any sort of mental illness, this actually increases your risk of getting suicide. So people with schizophrenia, delusional disorders, once they have that, you have to look out for that possibility. So what depression is? Depression is something we have been looking at depression for years, because what the World Health Organization told us, by 2030, depression will be the major cause of what you call economic burden to treat. So we have been preparing globally, the mental health community have realized, look, every generation depression is increasing, coming even at younger age groups. Now, recently, we had some statistics show that even the elders in Trinidad, they had committing, dying by suicide. So when you reach that spectrum, yes, Minister Cox had given the figures. So the fact is, when we looked at suicide, we would think it's just really like the middle area where persons have, different things could trigger it, like interpersonal problems with, you have problems, family problems, you have problems with siblings fighting over land, relationship problems with boyfriend, girlfriend. That is a major source of, we call it tabanka locally, but that can go in.
And then a thing about that is that we make fun of it, and we shouldn't.
Yes, we
shouldn't.
No.
It's a serious thing.
It is. It is serious. So we look at those financial stressors, and then you have all these factors coming in could make somebody succumb to depression. So therefore, we want to look at some of the statistics. The statistics show that more women are depressed than men, twice as many women, right? And the other facts, it shows that more men kill themselves. So look at the disparity. Now, more women will come out. They will go to clinics. They'll reach out for help with their group.
Yes,
they are willing to
talk.
come out. While men now will stay home. They will fret. Men use alcohol to basically medicate. And this is why, and they use more lethal methods. So yes, we find it's an explosion. Some people say it's like a tsunami of depression going to descend on us by 2030. So, okay, so how do we prepare for it? Because if we know that at different age groups, we are seeing it increasing, because between 15 to 29 years of age, suicide is the fourth highest cause. Now, imagine if you have a child, you have a nephew and niece at that age, you have to look out of those individuals, because somehow their coping skills not like from before. So we try to figure why, what's going on in the world? Why are people just, taking their lives? And sometimes, we found that other support factors in place. Let's say, as I mentioned, the woman will have their support factors. And studies have shown that even children, if you pray with your child, whichever religion, that parents who pray with their children, those children are less prone to depression and suicide. So there are other little factors that will come in to the whole scenario. Let's say elderly persons are now thinking about that. We have this situation where a woman, husband is dead, she's a widow, her children are not even taking her on. So she comes like what we call the empty nest syndrome. She feels useless. I've worked, I've tried everything for my kids. Now they just turn their backs on me. So this is something that we have to look at. How do we engage? And I guess family and social services do engage sometimes the elderly in trying to get them into groups to come out and speak.
Interact,
So depression comes really where you find that it's really doctors tend to look at basically 9 sort of symptoms. But the two major ones are if you are just feeling down and depressed and you feel hopeless. That's one. Second thing is if you lose your interest in things you once enjoyed. So let us say a child loved cricket or a child loved even gaming, and suddenly that child stopped doing that. That's a warning signal.
Yeah.
So those are the two major ones. So once you get one or the other, lasted for 2 weeks, because anybody could go into a mood down sometimes. Persons may, a child lost a pet recently. The mother called me and said, no, give that child time to bereave. That's not depression.
Yes.
If it's lasted longer than 2
That's
weeks.
it, yes.
And the symptoms we look at is if you have a change in appetite.
Yeah.
So you could either eat less or eat more. A change in sleep pattern. You could sleep more or you could sleep less. A change, we have something called psychomotor retardation, where or agitation, where a child may be just restless, can't sit still, or an adult walking up and down, or when they move, they feel a heaviness. Then you have suicidal thoughts coming into play, and also, so these are some of the things we look at: appetite, sleep, changes, and then sometimes you just feel tired all the time. So a child coming in tired or an adult coming in tired, we do medical screening too, as Felicia mentioned. When they come in, a doctor has to look at thyroid problems, other anemia for the tiredness, and then we go. So when you have these symptoms lasting longer than 2 weeks, you should reach out for help.
And COVID didn't help a lot at all.
No,
I mean,
that
it
like an
contributed.
accelerant. That was accelerant.
It was.
It is.
We do have, and remember, you can send us your questions via TTT Live online on Facebook, and you can also call us at 622-4010. We do have a question. If a child comes from a suspected abusive home and a teacher wants to contact Family Services, what is the safest way for a teacher to do this? You see, you were coming back to these teacher questions because we see it all the time. So what is a safe way in which we could do that?
So the guiding principle of our profession is confidentiality. Therefore, all information that comes to the division is held within that context of confidentiality. So even if a teacher calls and that teacher says, I don't want to be identified because of something, because of XYZ, we would respect that and not identify the person who made that report. So that person can call us via our telephone lines, which is 623-2608. That number again, it's 623-2608, extension 6701 to 6710. They can also reach out to us via the hotline, which is 800-COPE. They can also reach out to us via Facebook, where they can send us a message inbox and we would respond to them, in a timely manner.
Great. So everything is totally confidential. We have a call. We have a caller from Central. I so want to get to the suicide to speak with Ms. Jakey, but let's take the call. Hello, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, Ria, to you and the panel. How are you
Can't
doing?
hear them.
Hello? Hello?
No, we're...
Hello?
Okay, Shagonas, go ahead.
Yes, hi, Ria. Good evening to you on the panel. How are you?
We're good, thanks. Thank you.
Okay. I just happened to tune in, and the first thing when I tuned in, I heard you made a statement, and you were just saying that you saw someone singing, and you got a little bit confused. And
Well, I was wondering what was going on.
What I would say about mental health is that we have a lot of people in Trinidad. That is the first thing that they sort of jump to conclusions. I'm not saying you did.
Yeah.
I'm saying that sometimes we see a situation
That's
and
right.
we automatically assume that this person has mental health problems. What I'm saying is that in your particular circumstances, we don't know if that person would have been going through something at home, and that was his coping mechanism to just remove himself from the situation and walk away and perhaps clear his head and sing or whatever. So that's the first thing I want to say. We have to be very mindful about how we go, layman diagnosing people with mental health problems.
Yes, thank you so much for that.
I would like to say
Thank you for that,
is
caller.
that we are living.
I'm actually glad that she said that, because I think Trinbagonians on the whole, which is why I didn't make any assumptions about that person as well. I was wondering, what was the situation with that person, because we make assumptions. And, the first thing we say is like, oh, that they're mad, they need to go to St. Anne's. And it's not always just about that, which is why we need to get to the bottom of things sometimes to really help people. But as we're talking as well about depression, and Dr. Dayal Singh said, 2 weeks. And usually that is the time frame, if you still continue to feel depressed after 2 weeks, you need to get some sort of help. And I think it's for the individual as well to realize that they need to get some sort of help. Or people who are looking on and seeing that, look, this is going on a little too long, they need to get some help. Tell us how the suicide hotline works, because it may be in the 2 weeks that, a person is feeling depressed, and maybe they do feel as like something is going, things are not just going right, and just might end it right now. I just can't. You're going to tell us that after the break. We're going to take a short one, and we're going to come back, and she's going to tell us that just after the break, what causes that, and how you can get in touch with the suicide hotline. Stay with us.
Are you on board yet? Don't line up. Sign up and enjoy the convenience of the direct deposit system from the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. Yes, convenience is at your fingertips when you sign up to receive your disability assistance and public assistance grants and senior citizens pension directly from your bank account. No need to worry. Your money is safe and free from fraud and theft. So avoid lining up and try signing up. Log on to www.social.gov.tt or visit your local board office for more details and sign up today. Remember, direct deposit. It's fast, it's easy, and it's safe. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, helping, empowering, transforming lives.
The National Family Services Division of the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services extends its support and commitment to individuals, families, and households. These support services include counseling and psychosocial support, workshops and webinars, and sensitization sessions under the parenting unit, support to grandparents raising their grandchildren under the grandparenting program. Support is offered anonymously and free of charge. For more information, please call the National Family Services Division at 623-2608, extension 6701 to 6711. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, helping, empowering, transforming lives.
And we're back here. It's Family Time. Let's talk. I just want to remind you before we actually get into the conversation with Mrs. Simone Alexander Jakey that you can send your questions on our TTT Live online Facebook page, as well as call us at 622-4010. They are welcomed. Please do call if you have any sort of question. There's nothing like a stupid question. All questions will be addressed. So please, we need to discuss mental health, and that's exactly what we're doing right now. And we did also talk about depression and about having 2 weeks if you find that you're feeling depressed, you don't want to eat, you've changed the things that you may be doing and you just don't want to do it anymore, or you may be overeating or anything like that. And if it continues for more than 2 weeks, something might be wrong, that you can't bounce back and get back to that normal self that you may be. And if you feel that you're heading down that road and thinking thoughts, because they do tend to creep in there, and you do sometimes tend to ignore them, there is help out there. I know people think that there is no help. There is help. You think that this is the end of it. I can't go anymore. There is help, okay? And I'm really pleading to people out there because this is something that has hit home with me. So Mrs. Simone Alexander Jakey, she is actually of the suicide hotline. So tell us about the suicide hotline. How do you operate? How do you help? What is it that you do?
So the Suicide Prevention Hotline was launched in June of this year by our Honorable Minister, Ms. Donna Cox, and the executive of the Ministry of Social Development for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. After the pandemic, we observed that they had a high increase of persons being depressed, suicidal, in crisis. And as a response policy, they created the hotline. And as a result, it is a confidential hotline. It is toll-free, 800-COPE, and it is 24 hours per day. So if in chance you're feeling depressed at 1 o'clock in the morning, because you know at night it'll be silent and our minds turn to a race, you could call us 2 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the evening. There's always somebody at the other end. The persons who would be taking your calls are trained, qualified, active listeners who would listen. And if after the assessment they recognize, oh, you need further intervention, then we can further refer you to our stakeholders. It starts within our own ministry. So we have the National Family Services, and then we liaise with different, like the Trinidad and Tobago Police, the ambulance services. So the Penn Insurance Authority, so it depends on the nature of the call and the assessment, we would then know how to refer you.
Okay.
But I want to stress the confidentiality part of our service. So we don't break confidentiality. We inform you. If we have to, we must inform you that we are going to disclose your information to this person for you to receive further intervention.
And if the person doesn't agree, you don't do it?
No, we don't.
Right. So the person has to agree to do that as well.
That they want that service.
Right. And I think it's a point too, when people who are considering things like that, they themselves do have to come to a point to realize for themselves if they need to get that help, that, okay, go ahead, because I need this.
That's correct.
Now, there's another thing I think people may be a little bit antsy about it being recorded. Is it going to be recorded?
Oh, most definitely, for transparency and accountability and training purposes, because sometimes we think we're given a total package, and in truth and in fact, we're not given the total package. How do we now measure and monitor that we're actually doing what we are mandated to do? And hence the reason we could use it for as a teaching. We could look at it as accountability. Somebody want to complain, we have, okay, this is what happened. So for all this reason why it would be recorded. So it's for on both ends where everybody benefit for best optimum service.
Right. So maybe, you know, depending on how someone would have dealt with something, you can use it as training purposes and say, well, maybe you could have done this instead.
Most definitely.
And it would have, you know, gotten a better result than what you did.
Most definitely.
Right.
Because every life matters, and we want to ensure that we give the best.
Yes, and as I was telling Ms. Mohammed, you know, one of the things in ways that's hit home for me is a very good friend of mine, had 22 years, and I don't like to talk about it because it does get me very emotional, did, you know, hang himself at 22 years old, just got married, just moved into his new place and hung himself. And we cannot figure out why, you know, and this affects not just the person who was going through this and actually came to that point, didn't talk to anybody about it. It affects the people who are left behind, you know, because she's going through, and I know family services would also be a part of that and helping families work through things like that as well. Tell us, though, how you can, with families with depression, Ms. Farisha Mohammed, work through situations such as that, especially where depression is concerned.
So all families that come to us, an assessment is done. As I said before, we do assessments so that way we would understand the nature of the services that our clients would be needed, and the intervention plan would be tailored to meet the need of that client. Because you just gave an example of someone who would have lost a son to suicide, and even though that person may have lost a son to suicide and somebody else comes to us who they would have lost a child to suicide, their dynamics still are different. So we want to ensure that however we tailor our intervention plan, it is specific to that family and to meet their specific needs. Again, we do that assessment to understand understand if we are equipped to keep that case with us, or should we refer it to our mental health specialist who would be able to medicate, because at Family Services we don't medicate. What we do is a lot of talk therapy. That is our main focus, where we talk persons through, we empower them in showing them that we use strength-based perspective, where we ensure that you understand that your own strengths can help you overcome your situation. So those are really that is the major ways in which we tailor our intervention towards families who encounter grief. So we do grief therapy, with the different categories of families, because you would have a parent-child relationship, we have sibling relationships. So even that and the way in which we do intervention towards the different subsets within the family, it is tailored differently, because you would have shared a different relationship with the person who would have died.
Okay. We're continuing the discussion here. I am going to come back to Mrs. Simone Alexander-Jakey, because we do have so many more questions for her, and that people can learn as well how they can get help, how they can call the number, exactly what it entails, and what you can or not give depending on how you feel about it. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit more right after the break. Don't forget that you can also contact us at TTT Live Online on our Facebook page. You can give us a call as well at 622-4010. So please use those options this afternoon. Ask your questions. They will be answered, and we will answer those right after this break. Stay with us.
The National Family Services Division of the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services extends its support and commitment to individuals, families, and households. These support services include counseling and psychosocial support, workshops and webinars, and sensitization sessions under the parenting unit, support to grandparents raising their grandchildren under the grandparenting program. Support is offered anonymously and free of charge. For more information, please call the National Family Services Division at 623-2608, extension 6701 to 6711. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. Helping, empowering, transforming lives.
Are you on board yet? Don't line up. Sign up and enjoy the convenience of the direct deposit system from the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. Yes, convenience is at your fingertips when you sign up to receive your disability assistance and public assistance grants and senior citizens pension directly from your bank account. No need to worry. Your money is safe and free from fraud and theft. So avoid lining up and try signing up. Log on to www.social.gov.tt or visit your local board office for more details and sign up today. Remember, direct deposit. It's fast, it's easy, and it's safe. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. Helping, empowering, transforming lives.
Welcome back. It's Family Time. Let's talk. And we are talking mental health, mental illnesses, childhood and youth development, as well as suicide and support systems. Now, I am going to get back into the suicide hotline, but before we do that, we did have a question. Is mental health a topic in the current primary, secondary school syllabus? Can any one of you answer that question?
Well, it's not part of the syllabus, but we have tried to build an awareness in schools that we have to look out for each other, because there were cases where primary school children were acting out, some committed, died by suicide, etc. So it's really an awareness. So there was a trust to teach other children to be what you call peer counselors.
Right.
So they look out for their friends in their class. And the friends now may rather go and talk to them rather than a stranger.
Yes.
Or a so peer counselors is something we have been pushing. The other thing that I have tried to engage the Minister of Education with is the fact that if we can do a depression rating scale, Or there's also the behavioral assessment scale, a BEST scale also, where teachers, again, the burden will be on the teachers to look at the children's behavior. So now you can now judge that. So if we get these scales on board, even if you have a child, let's say a child starts in school, but after the first term, children will settle. They're going to adjust. They're going to have problems. I'm not bothering about the first term. After the second term, see if that child is not settling, not learning. By the third term, if a child is not picking up, let's get an assessment of the child. Suppose that child has dyslexia or there's dysgraphia, dyscalculia, where the child cannot comprehend math or English. That child now will be sitting in a class, everybody trying to gain in knowledge, and the child cannot fathom what's going on. Just the child unable.
Yeah.
And now that child will say, what should I do? I could get withdrawn, I could get depressed, or I could just act out and mash up the class because I don't want them to show that I can't learn. But it's not the child's fault, it's the child is wired differently. So basically, we have to do some sort of assessment, especially in those that have, so I say anything, look at the third, because a child now interacting with others. And another period we have to look at is in high school, when children are getting into puberty. Because you see hormones coming in, surging hormones coming in. Your little baby now, son, suddenly have a deep voice, muscular, he might want to slam down the door, be rude to you, doesn't want religion. So in that way, that's not mental illness, that may be just hormones acting out. So therefore, you have to now
be able to tell the difference.
You have to tell the difference. And some parents are, they come to me, look, my little baby was an angel, and now back chat, slamming door, So therefore, you have
teenage.
Yes,
hormones.
teenage. So that is teenager. That may not be anything mental, but then we have to now counsel the parents.
Right.
So therefore, we have to now, so in schools really, there should be an assessment.
Yeah.
And this is something we have to keep pushing for. And one thing I've been pushing for, though, we know we have cases of sexual abuse. We have been seeing it, we have been hearing it. The figures are there recently where we have seen it is increasing. We have to, just as we teach the children the alphabet ABC, teach them what is good touch, bad touch.
That's right.
Because a lot of abuse in the homes, from their relatives, from their uncles, from everybody. So if a child learns ABC, you learn, those are my private parts. I am not going to let you touch me.
That's
the minute
right.
you touch me, I'm going to tell mommy this one, or tell the teacher. And we need to instill that as part of our mantra to tell kids, this is your body.
Yes.
And if we get that now, we will be stopping a lot of abuse in homes
We would.
and even in elsewhere.
Oh,
So
yeah.
those are things we need to start educating children and assessing kids properly.
Yes, and I also learned when we were learning, call the anatomical parts by the actual names.
Yes.
Don't have these little funny names for it. Call it by what it actually is so that they will learn what it is. We do have a Facebook comment saying that we must differentiate between anonymity, confidentiality, and grief. So differentiating between anonymity, confidentiality, and grief. And secrecy, apparently. So, okay, that's a comment that came on Facebook. All right. So let's talk about the suicide hotline again, because I wanted to know if people call through, do they have to give their names? Do they have to give their numbers? Do they have to give their address? What information would they have to give, if any at all? Or is it just up to the caller?
It's up to the caller. They don't have to give their names. However, if you required further intervention, then we would require a name, your address, your telephone number, so we can now refer you to the relevant agency so you could get that service that you need.
Now, it's just Trinidad and Tobago nationals that this is open to?
No, this is open to every person who resides in Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay.
So, yeah, got every life matter.
Yes, and I'm glad that you keep saying that every life matters. Now, within your phone calls, what are some tips that you can get from individuals and families and that sort of thing, that they can actually spot some of the warning signs that this person might be considering suicide?
So some of the tips you would, might observe as a friend or a family or even a colleague is that, they're telling you goodbye. They're wrapping up, start this person of their personal belongings. They might make a will. They might say, it's a burden upon you and I don't want to be a burden. So these are some of the signs you will look at to see if something is wrong. And if you are observing any of those signs, please feel free to call us at 800-COPE and we definitely will guide you accordingly.
In addition to the young persons, it have Childline also that they can utilize, 800-4321, so they can also get help. So just make that call. Our lives matter, everybody life matter, and we want them to reach out because the service is toll free. It is not at any cost to anyone. The government see the need that the citizens require, the residents of Trinidad and Tobago require this service, and they put forward this policy, and we should utilize it because it costs nothing to us, the citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, because your life matter, your family, who would miss you dearly. So call 800-COPE and get further intervention.
Okay, now I see also that there are other things like making a will, seeking access to lethal means, talking or feeling about feeling trapped. There's also extreme mood swings, increasing alcohol and drugs. They're drinking more. They actually started using drugs now, withdrawing, isolating, as Dr. Diao Singh spoke about, eating or sleeping more or less, exhibiting reckless behavior.
Yes.
If someone is seeing these things in a loved one or even a neighbor, it doesn't necessarily have to be a loved one. You're seeing these things, and even in your neighbor, because we need to be, each other's keepers. Yeah, that's right, our keepers, right? And they call the suicide hotline. What sort of information would you give to them, or what would you tell them?
So they can call in, any concerned person can call in to us and give us the information, and we will return a call. But of course, you have to get consent from the person, because sometimes they would inform you that, I didn't tell them as yet. So we would say, well, have a conversation with them, and then let the person give them our number. They can call us, or we will call them back.
Okay, so it's not necessarily something that you say, oh gosh, I'm really worried about that person. I don't like how they're moving, and they're just looking different and whatever. Don't just pick up the line and call. Try to intervene.
Still pick up the line and call. Yes,
but also intervene and say, listen, we sit down and chat a little bit, and we have a conversation.
Correct, because people have different situations. No two situations may be the same.
Okay.
So hence the reason, pick up the line, call as toll free.
Okay.
And so you could get further advice and suggestions how to move forward.
And sometimes you may have also to reach out to the relatives. So I may see an individual or hear this person has, these mood swings, drinking more, talking about, I want to end it. You reach out to that person doesn't want to come for therapy. So now you are as a healthcare giver, helpless. What do you do? I tend to say, reach out to the relatives to say, listen, this person may need some sort of help. Let's try and together try and see if we can
get them to talk and something. And they can also reach out to the social services division as well.
Yes.
So that's and what's the number to call again?
623-2608, extension 6701 to 6710. And our services is throughout Trinidad, so that way you don't have to leave Point Fortin and come to Port of Spain, but we have offices in those areas. So when you call those numbers, you get an office that is closest to where you live. Yes, so we have.
What I like about it too, and I've always said this, is that because you have offices all over Trinidad, that if you don't want someone to know your business, you can go to somewhere else.
Yes, definitely.
And it'll be totally confidential.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about it. Nobody's going to know. If you think that they might know, but what you going to say ever? It's different.
Yes.
They will not know anything confidential. It's between you and you.
Yes.
I want to just touch a little bit on, because we're talking about youth as well, youth depression, suicide and support and that type of thing. With all the violence and behaviors, mental, how is that related, you think, in any way? Because we're seeing a lot of violence in the schools these days. It's coming out. It may be what's happening in the homes. It may be a situation that they're dealing with personally. You see the hormones, especially with the youth. The hormones are raging. How do we identify, how do we deal with those types of things, those behaviors?
Well, if you look at violence could be a reflection of society and the whole. If you see you come from a neighborhood and there's violence there, you may be tuned to violence. If your family is a family where you have domestic violence, you may decide, I'm going to act out like that too, because you're now caught up in this violence home. The movies we look at,
the music,
games we play, the music, those things play on your mind. It's what you put into your mind is how you act out. And besides all of that, besides the social effects on mental illness that's out there, you also have the fact that sometimes depression can come out as irritability, as aggression. So a child depressed may not be a child just looking sad, looking down, withdrawn.
Somebody
That child
lashing
could be
out.
mashing out. Yeah, so this is something we have to look out for.
Yeah, as well. And if we do see that, again, you can contact the suicide hotline as
yes,
well, prevention
800.
hotline, or get in touch with the social services division as well. We're almost at the end, but please, you can still send in your comments as well as on TTT Live Facebook online, as well as 6224010 if you've got any more questions, because this is a topic that I think this is not just the beginning. It needs to be a continuous topic. Mental illness, especially in Trinidad and Tobago, childhood and youth depression, which sometimes we may not even recognize, and suicide and support systems as well that we do have. Because as I said, people who are considering it, who are so depressed and considering, think that there's no outlet whatsoever. But there are outlets that people can go and get help. Please. And the suicide hotline is, of course, 800-COPE.
Hope, yeah.
That's the suicide
2376.
prevention hotline,
Yes.
800-COPE, which is 800-2673. So please, if you know of anyone, if you yourself are feeling that way and you think that that's entering into your mind, don't let it get too serious. As soon as you feel that, you're thinking thoughts of it, please call and they can help. The Social Services Division as well is there. It's a free service. It's all over Trinidad. They can help. Dr. Diyal Singh has also, you're in the Barataria Clinic.
Yes.
So he's there as well, that he will also get in touch with you as well.
There are 27 psychiatric clinics right through Trinidad and Tobago. And the Ministry of Health actually started a stress clinic. So there are 2 stress clinics,
Right.
adolescent clinics where children could come and talk in Mount Hope, all free of charge. So
Lovely.
persons have a lot of areas they could reach out.
You have access.
yeah.
People, you have access to these things. Please use them. Let's get your final thoughts. Let's start with Dr. Diyal Singh.
Depression is real. WHO said it's going to get worse. So we have to prepare as mental caregivers, as persons in social services, as parents, teachers, as fellow men, to look out for the signs of depression in our circle and see if we can now reach out for help, because it's there, it's real, and their help is there. And just to actually beg people and plead with them, please reach out for help.
I know, and like I said, it's not just a thing, they mad, they need to go to St. Anne's. Time for that done.
Yeah.
No longer that, please. It's no longer that kind of situation. Ms. Farisha Mohammed, your final thoughts.
I would just like to ask persons who are considering suicide, is it that you really want to die or you just want that pain to go away? And really ponder on that thought. And when you get your answer, reach out to us, because as we are all here saying in unison, there is help. Help is there 24 hours per day, free of charge and accessible to the general public.
Thank you. And Mrs. Simone Alexander Jakey.
As I would say, every life matters, and your life is matter to each and every one of us who here. The toll-free hotline, 800-COPE, it is there. Please utilize it, and especially for the younger ones, even if you don't want to call the 800-COPE, please call Childline. Your life matter. You may feel confused at times. Call us, and we will help you get through it. Thank you.
Oh, gosh. I just hope that, people have heard this message that has got out there and that they listen, that you really listen, okay, Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you all, Dr. Diyal Singh, Mrs. Simone Alexander Jakey, and of course, Ms. Farisha Mohammed. That's our show. So let me thank our guests once again for being here this afternoon. And we are going to have another show next week. So you and our viewers at home, those who sent in your questions, thank you so much. And you can join us at the same time next week for another edition of It's Family Time, Let's Talk. My name is Ria Rupchan, and on behalf of all of us here at TTT, have a great afternoon and a safe one.
This is TTT. Live for local.
The following program is rated PG. Parental guidance